If you live or have lived out in the country or are old enough, you've probably seen the mail pouch tobacco barns. These barns were painted with advertisements for mail pouch chewing tobacco. Barn owners would receive money for the tobacco advertisement, and as a bonus, the distributor of the tobacco would keep barns looking good with a fresh coat of paint. When the Highway Beautification Act was passed in 1965, the mail pouch barns were given an exemption because they were considered to be historic landmarks. I would see them in Pennsylvania when we would visit my grandparents. I never saw any of the red barns, just the black barns. Those that I saw weren't in the best of shape, and I'm sure by this point they've either been demolished or have fallen to the ground. So what does this do with blending of text on an irregular surface? The paint of the barns being on an irregular surface doesn't look smooth, as it soaks into the fissures and planks on the barn, like this one in the picture. When we try to recreate this, the text on a photo is going to look unnaturally smooth, and the edges are going to look a little bit too straight. This video is going to show you how to fix that to make it look more realistic. The first thing I'm going to do is to type mail pouch, because we need to keep with the theme on the barn. So I'm going to zoom in several times so I can have a larger view here. We can always resize the text later on. I wrote down the size I used before, so it shouldn't be that much of a big deal. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to type in mail pouch. And then I'm going to make the color is going to be that, and then I'm going to pull it to make it a little bit bigger. And my font is going to be the font size 76. So I'll go down here. This is 72, and I'm going to type in 76 right here, and that's going to be how big it is. So that's what I have for this. I'll move mail pouch over there, and I'm going to check out and make sure that this is the right hex code. So my hex code should be BF9A40, and that's not what this is. So I need to have this be BF9A4 and 0. Okay, so that's the hex code for this color, and that's what my color is going to be. So I have the correct font size and the correct hex code, but I don't have the correct font. And I want my font to be Britannic bold. And that's close to what a lot of these mail pouch things look like. Then for the second one, down here, I'm going to type tobacco. So I'm going to type in tobacco, and my hex color is going to be white, so I'm going to take this and move this down so we can see it. And click, click, click. Make sure that we have it selected. It's going to be white, and my font size is going to be a little bit smaller. It's going to be 60. Okay, so now, we also need to make sure that this is the correct font, which is going to be Britannic bold. So now we have our text, and we have them in the appropriate color. Now there are two things that we need to take care of. Notice that this nowhere in the world looks like a paint job on a barn, and that's because the type is too smooth and the edges are too regular. There's no way that that's going to look like paint. So there are two things that we need to do. I'm going to do the edges first, and to do that I'm going to need to use something called a displacement map. And to do this I'm going to have to make a copy of the barn. So I'll click on the background, right click, and then click duplicate. And I've got a copy of my barn. On this copy of the barn, I'm going to need to have a black and white adjustment layer. So we'll go down here to Adjustments and go up here to HSL. This will open, and then I'm going to turn down the saturation to where we have a black and white barn. Now keep in mind we still have our old barn down here. We've got this one, and then our duplicate is what the black and white adjustment is working on. The next thing I'll do is I'm going to click on Filters. That's right here, this little hourglass. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to select Gaussian Blur, and then I'm going to blur it maybe to, I don't know, 2 to 3 pixels. We'll just say, I don't want to do it that much. 2.6, that's good enough. As long as it's 2 to 3 pixels, that's fine. So now we have our Gaussian blur. Notice that the black and white barn is now a little bit blurred. And so we're done with that, and now we can close that. Now we're going to work on our top text. So I need to click on Mail Pouch up here. That's the very top text. So now that we've clicked on Mail Pouch, we need to click on Filters, like that, and then find somewhere in here, there is Displace, which is right there. So we need to click on Displace, like that. But now notice over here that we have this little square that's all wiggly that has appeared. That's called the displacement map, and it's going to displace the edges of our text so that they look a little bit more like paint. So in order to apply that and do that, we need to go down here to this box and press Load Map Layers from Beneath. Okay, so there we go on that. Now, once we do that, it should be able to change the strength like that. And ooh, that looks weird. We only need to move this around enough to where it looks a little bit like the paint is there. What is happening is the edges are trying to attach to these planks right here. And you know it's not going to look like that. That looks like something you would use for Halloween. So all we're going to do is I'm just going to move it enough to where it just looks a little bit like it's well, not dripping, but changing shape. And then we'll have what we need. So once we get what we need, we're going to close the box. And then we're going to do the same thing with the tobacco text. So we're going to click on the tobacco text and go up to Filters and find Displace. And then we're going to load map from layers beneath like this, and then see it kind of borrowed from the settings that we already had on these strength settings from up here. So I think I'm going to leave it like that. And so now we're going to close that, and we've got that part done. Now that we've got this drippy paint look, or whatever you want to call it, we can delete these Gaussian blur effect right here. So we'll delete that. We'll delete the HSL shift adjustment, and we'll delete the background layer. And now we're back to where we have our mail pouch and our tobacco, and we have our paint kind of irregularity around the edges. But the text still looks a little bit weird, and I think you're going to agree with me that it looks too flat. So to make the paint look like it's soaked into the planks on the barn, we need to use some blend options. But if we try to use the blend options to make it soak into the planks, it's not going to work on this, because basically blend options will not work on filters. So what we have to do is we have to right click on this and then click group. So all this is grouped into one thing. And so once we have it grouped, we can go over here to this little gear right here, and this is our blend options, and we can click on that. We'll move this out of the way so you can see what happens. And the thing that we're going to use is this panel right here. We're going to take this and move it down and see how it's disappearing into the barn like that. And then we can adjust how much it shows up by getting this and moving around in the middle. Since this looks like an old barn, I'm going to make sure that it looks a little bit faded, and I'm going to do that. And so once I get my blend options the way I like them, then all I have to do is I have to close that. So I have this one done, and then all we have to do is to do the same thing to the tobacco one right here. First we have to right click and we have to group it like that. So now we have the group. Then we can go over here, make sure this is selected now. We have to go over here to the blend options and move that out of the way and do the same thing that we did before. Move this all the way down so that it blends in, and then we need to check the blending of the paint like that, and then move it around a little bit like that until we get what we want, and then close it off. Okay, now we can take a look at our handiwork by zooming out. So I'm going to go Control minus and minus, and there is our mail pouch tobacco barn with the paint that looks more realistic. I mean, the edges have an irregular shape, and the paint is meshed into the barn. Now, if you wanted to fix other things, like if you thought this was too straight, you could change that around. I don't know how much that really matters. And, you know, if you want to be a little bit bigger, of course, you can change that and all that sort of thing. There we are. Now we have our mail pouch tobacco barn. If any of you have ever seen any of these mail pouch tobacco barns, let me know in the comments. In some small towns, the mail pouch designs are on the side of buildings. If you live in certain states, these old signs are iconic, like the Coca-Cola signs. So give this tutorial a big thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed, hit that button as well as the notification bell. Check out my design shops, Spreadshirt and Redbubble, where you can see my designs I've learned to make while I've been learning this software. This journey has gone a lot farther than I ever expected. While you're at it, check out my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can buy me a cup if you want.